and welcome everyone to the May 23rd edition of the Lorton Visioning Task Force. And here's a glimpse at the agenda for tonight. If I didn't know if you wanted to do a brief welcome, Nick, or if you had any announcements, or if there's nothing, really that you'd like to cover, we can continue on.
Popeyes is open. It's about all that's new there.
Okay.
So I went in there last Friday, and I think people were a little frustrated by that. You get a lot of like 16, 17-year-olds working. Looks like it was maybe their first job, 3 days on the job, and they were taking a lot of grief. And at one point, I turned to somebody beside me. I said, "Listen, it's look like he's like 16 years old. First day on the job. Let's cut him a little slack here. give him a few weeks, and they'll be fine." So when I drove by, I think on Saturday night, I was up at the shopping center. It looks like things have progressed. Other than that, I don't think anything else is really new.
Panera's coming along nicely.
It is. Yeah, I'm not sure anybody's heard the date yet, but I would imagine kind of late summer, maybe.
Yeah.
Over there. Amazon's Fresh is still not open, but it looks like they had all of the shelving and stuff in there, so it's probably imminent.
I think
it's looking good over there.
I think the big bet is what's going to open first, Panera Bread or Amazon Fresh.
Hey Nick, don't discredit that news about Popeyes, man. That's a big deal in my house.
Oh yeah, no, it's a great. I went in there. It's a great place. It's a good atmosphere. It just they're just getting going. It was just the staff was fairly fresh, and there were a lot of people in there when I went the Friday right after they opened. I went in there, and there was a ton of people, a lot of people waiting, and a lot of new hires, and they just need a little bit of time to get up to speed. But hopefully, it'll be a successful location, and certainly seemed to be that way when I was there.
Oh yeah, I'm sure it will. Like I said, I mean, that place is popular. I don't care where you go.
Yeah.
So, it's definitely a crowning moment there. I'm excited.
Okay, I'll expect to see you over there.
Oh, you will. The same way you used to see me at Five Guys, you'll see me there.
That's right. That's right. I remember that. Now we have choices.
All right. Well, thanks, Nick,
right.
And everyone for the update on Popeyes. Before moving on into the agenda, I have a couple of items too that I wanted to go over, and we're sad to announce that tonight is Sophia's final task force meeting because she's accepted the opportunity for a promotion a few months ago, and she's been in transition for the past few months. And you all will recall that Sophia has played a vital role on this team since the planning staff first began to work with the task force, and her presence will be greatly missed. And although she's transitioning into her new position with the Planning Division's Environment and Development Review Branch, I'll still be able to see her and ask her questions and also discuss new ideas from time to time. So if anyone has anything they want me to write down and ball up and throw across the room at her, to get some answers, just let me know, because she'll still be in her same workspace, which is right across the hallway from me. So on behalf of everyone here tonight, Sophia, we wanted to congratulate you and also thank you for all the expertise, positive energy, and effort that you provided to this study. So on a related note, I wanted to introduce Leah Niebauer as the newest member of the Planning Division's team on this project. Leah joined us at the end of April after working for the City of Alexandria's Planning and Zoning Department, where she oversaw the Architectural Review Board staffing, and also spearheaded the department's housing for all equity plan. So please join me in welcoming Leah to the team as well. Thank you. So next, we just wanted to go back to the study timeline, and here you'll see that we're still in this phase of updating the vision and frameworks for the project based on feedback that was received when the consultants at DCI presented their initial draft of the frameworks at the last task force meeting, which was held at the end of February. And if you've had a chance to preview the information that I sent out last Thursday, we hope that you noticed how the vision is taking shape in the updated frameworks that are being built from the task force's early work with staff and now evolving to incorporate many of the things that we have discussed since many of the things that we have discussed and learned from your comments, as well as through public engagement with the greater Lorton community through the most recent workshop and then the survey that was closed in mid-March. And within these frameworks, we've also been keeping in mind information that we've learned from the market analysis report that was that you all were briefed on at the meeting in January. And as we continue to move forward, we recognize that there still may be a significant piece that is missing. So when we move toward the end of this conceptual phase of the visioning process, we want to reach back. We're thinking about reaching back out to the representatives of the ownership for the 3 opportunity sites to gain some additional insight for the potential benefits of having various improvements to the public realm so near their properties. In addition to these ideas about how we can plan to build Lorton's identity through enhancements to open space and placemaking, the frameworks recommend for all of us to consider improved connections between all parts of Lorton, east and west of I-95, and also ways of improving conditions that pedestrians and cyclists move about and within the Lorton area and the focus area, and also looking at greater options for transit, such as locally focused, such as a possibility for a locally focused express circulator. So in recognizing how these kinds of solutions could support economic growth at the opportunity sites, we also want these properties to be in a position to serve as contributors to the study of future land use planning in Lorton. And again, that's why when we have a good idea for the task force's thoughts and any additional ideas or improvements for the frameworks, we plan to reach out to the folks who represent those opportunity sites to see if they have any ideas for how they could fit into the vision. So the survey that I mentioned in the previous slide closed in mid-March, and there were 270 responses in English and 1 that was received to the Spanish version. And as you can see here from both versions, community members from all walks of life place a high amount of value on these existing assets and also future assets that are planned for Lorton. And each of these assets that were identified in this question on the survey gained more than 50% of the responses. So that just shows that a lot of the communities, again, think pretty highly of some of the assets that are in place or being planned for the future. So these responses show that Lorton area residents already know about and also have positive opinions on these places. And a big part of why we sent out the maps highlighting area-wide assets and points of interest throughout the Lorton area on Thursday was so you can consider the size of Lorton and kind of zoom out and see how the focus area that we've been discussing fits in with these points of interest. And looking more closely at the blue outlines, we can see where the boundaries for the Lorton South Route 1 community planning sector and suburban center are on the east side of I-95 and mainly, and also how Laurel Hill is situated to the west. So on this map, we see where the focal area sits in relationship to the existing network of open space amenities that are found throughout the Lorton area. And even as we've spent a lot of time in the past, looking closely at the focus area and also at the opportunity sites. We just want this to serve as a reminder that we haven't forgotten about all these other assets that are either in place or emerging under their own current and future plans, such as Liberty and the Workhouse Art Center, and also the future Fairfax Peak and Alpine X. So getting back to the survey, 87% of the respondents to the survey felt that the Lorton community could benefit from creating strong links to nearby assets, such as the Workhouse Art Center, the Cross County Trail, and local and regional parks and trails, and also to help build the community's identity. They also felt that the Lorton community, 83% also felt that the Lorton community could benefit from additional outdoor community spaces and spaces for users of all ages and ability levels. 81% feel that the Lorton community could benefit from additional dine-in or takeout restaurants, although drive-through establishments weren't included in this category. And 77% of the Lorton community feel that 77% of the respondents feel that the Lorton community could benefit from defining a central core or heart where in Lorton, where personal or social activities and entertainment would take place. So looking at this slide, you'll see that 60% of the respondents feel that Lorton Road is in need of improvements to support walkability. And that's Lorton Road between Route 1 and Silverbrook Road. 37% said that biking improvements are needed, while the next highest priorities were set for improved placemaking, such as building frontage and presence along Lorton Road, open space access near Lorton Road, tree canopy along Lorton Road, and also lighting and landmarks in the vicinity of Lorton Road. So considering all these things that we've heard from the community, we've also recognized that comments from the task force indicated that there was a general feeling that improving on the 3 opportunity sites of Lorton Station, Gunston Plaza, and Lorton Marketplace are a good start, but more in-depth consideration for what happens at those sites should follow a more solid vision for how we can look at the whole of Lorton by identifying current obstacles that may be in place due to natural circumstances, as well as a lack of coordination in previous development. So as I turn the presentation over to Cecily with DCI, we're hoping that our joint efforts to address many of the key concerns that were set out by the task force can be recognized in this updated and emergent plan for the vision for Lorton's future. And after Cecily is finished, we will be breaking up into smaller groups of task force members so we can learn more from your feedback on the frameworks. So with that, I say thank you again and welcome, and I will hand it over to Cecily.
Well, before you hand it over, the statements being made are that this is what the task force is all about and the pieces. But I've read all of the materials for today and for the stuff, and I'm shocked and sort of disappointed that so little of this addresses the core issues of why this committee has spent the last 2 to 3 years working on this project, which is to build a central core for Lorton, to build a more of a downtown type an area where we can eat, drink, have businesses, and have a central core for. Instead, we seem to have just a couple of 3 different opportunity sites, which some or none may actually develop into anything because we have to get their buy-in. But there's little that puts the rest of it together, which is the core reason we had it, which was to create this new sort of a town center, concept and connecting these 3 places together. And so what we have instead is a lot of discussion about arts, which we never really had, and recreation, as, narratives and placemaking and signage and, vision for arts and recreation, but none of that's what we had started this effort into, and where they could kind of maybe have an arts character to them, or a recreation flavor to them. They miss the main central portion of what we've been spending all this time doing, and little talk
Well-
about this downtown that we're trying to create and this new sense of Lorton. It's instead just a little bit of here, a little bit of there, and then a whole bunch of placemaking.
Yeah,
I'm really,
thank
I
you,
just
Tim.
don't know who's in charge.
Thank you,
this.
Tim. A part of the discussion, the way that we're looking at the frameworks, you'll remember that Mike Linsky started off with frameworks, and this was a big part of what was part of the task force's discussion, and the reason that we haven't gone into a point of actually trying to define for you what downtown Lorton would be and what the heart of Lorton would be is because we want you to look at the frameworks, and we want to have that discussion with you where you look at these ideas and see how these ideas can contribute to what you have in thought, and what you may have to say in guiding us to how we look at a central core for Lorton. So that's getting into the breakout discussions that will be had later, and so that'll be part of the questions for the breakout discussion.
I apologize. I don't know what any of that means. What you're trying to say there, but frameworks and the like we've been talking about. I go back for years that we've been talking about this and development, and Linwood was right. He frequently said, "Hey, what we need to do is get down to some brass tacks. Where would we put? How much density is it going to take for us to get the things that we were all interested in, which was we wanted restaurants, we wanted to have some shopping opportunities, wanted to have this work play area, but what kind of density would that take to be able to make this happen? Where would that density go to make that happen? And where would this all be? And there's nothing in here at all that says anything. It doesn't even address any of that stuff. And here we are years later, and we burned through all this without making any progress, any discernible progress. And it could be that we come up with it and it's not right, and we would get there and say, yeah, but it's not going to work. It's too dense to get this. But we still have no clue yet as to what kind of density would be necessary for us to be able to have some successful restaurants and the like to coming in here.
Well, one of the major points is trying to be made in the frameworks is that the existing opportunity sites, the existing centers that are already there, have barriers to getting to these sites that are already there. So one of the things that the frameworks is trying to do is address the issues that are there in the current situation. So if you give us a chance and then get to the points of the discussion, I think it'll probably be best to have this discussion in the small breakout group.
I disagree. Listen, that's not fair. It's not right, because what happens instead is that you dominate the conversation. You guys control
the conversation is going to be for you.
You control the process, and then when we get to it, and if I look at the stuff, and even looked at where you were in your timelines, the timelines are spring 2022, and we're 2/3 of the way done, and we haven't had a meaningful discussion yet about any of the pieces that are critical, and we're still talking about the framework, and we're still talking about what the people have said they wanted. We know what they said. We started that way years ago. We're still just going around and round, and then once we break out into breakouts, then we're not even in the same room. We're not even in the same discussions. Who knows what each discussion going on? When do we get to any of those pieces that are relevant, or the pieces that we started this on? Why have
the reason for having breakouts is so there's enough time for everyone to have a say in the process, and everyone to speak to what they're seeing. So if you could bear with us, I'd like to let Cecily provide her.
So Stephen, this is Walt. Steve, I'm sorry, this is Commissioner. Mm-hmm. I've been quiet through this whole point, and I've missed a few meetings of late, but I agree with Tim And prior to COVID, we were meeting at the hotel. We were putting white sheets up on the board and on the wall in terms of what we wanted. We've said that. And to Tim's point, it seems like we're right back where we were 3-4 years ago when we started this committee and this task force, and that we haven't moved the needle forward at all. And the things that have come out of these listening sessions and from the community are things that we already know. And the question has been, where is there going to be? And we picked out these sites. Nick had us bring and email presentations of what we would want Lorton to look like in various places from around the United States. And we've talked about what New Jersey has. We talked about what Vegas looked like. We talked about Virginia Beach, various other places. And so I'm kind of at a loss as to where we are now. What are we talking about? Or why are we still talking about what we talked about 4 years ago?
No more framework.
So I just
We
want
already
to
have
echo what Tim
framework.
is saying.
No more framework. We already have framework. Time for concepts. My opinion is that all the money that's been spent on the outside people at this point has been absolutely squandered on stuff we already did and already knew. It is time to move forward. Now, where I disagree with Tim is I'm not hung up on density to do this or density to do that. I also recognize that there's a great big old RPA that's a problem right in the middle of it, but it's time for concepts. Framework time was a year ago. It's over, it's done before the consultant even got here. And you've made us sit through and do it again and again and again and again.
So can I guess one question that I would have is when you speak to concepts, what are you looking for in concepts?
Ideas to put the things together. We know what's here. We know what framework's here. What can you do with the framework that's here? The framework that's been talked about by the committee for 3 years now. It's time to start doing concepts and seeing things on paper.
But I mean, are you looking for a site plan concept for each of these sites without
ideas to connect the sites?
Yeah,
It's
and
more
you
than
keep
just
talking
the
about this.
site. It's a big picture. It's
Right,
not
it's more-
just the sites.
It's
That-
right.
that's
It's
what-
not the sites. It's a vision for the future, and it's a connecting of all those 3 sites together. But it's really not those sites. It's the connection and how we make this all together as a unified, as the place, and not just 3 opportunity sites. Those just are the 3 anchor pieces that connect everything else back together.
I mean, to Tim's point, and Stephen, you actually referenced this earlier. If there's not the transportation infrastructure for any of the 3 sites that you have in mind, then at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. So maybe we should, step 1 or step 2 is figuring out the transportation aspects of this to make sure that it's even feasible. And to Tim's point, it is a vision, but then we have to have something concrete as well to make sure that we're honing in on something. Walter mentioned that we used to meet in person, and I felt like that was more tangible for everybody. So it felt like we were progressing a little bit more there. So maybe, if we can get honed in on steps, like step 1, transportation, figure out, how the density will work towards all 3 sites or 1 site, and really breaking it down little by little to get to the bigger picture. But the various plans, we appreciate them and they're great, but we do need to really start making some ground, I feel like.
One thing I just want to add, because I think we're having really good conversation that needs to be had, is if everybody could put their cameras on, because it's really hard to discern people's reactions and to the conversation we're having. That would be great. Thank you all.
This is Megan. I wanted to add, about the progress has been slow, and I think we feel it too. I think one of the points that we have to acknowledge, though, is that we have had a market analysis done that has put our expectations for the types and the level and the density for the future market kind of in check, because that market analysis came back with a lower projected demand than what we had expected. And quite frankly, when we look at the type of, if we compare the type of development that was envisioned by the task force and by you all, it really would only go on one of those opportunity sites. There's only
That's Megan, I'm sorry, that report, which showed potential demand and whatnot, is based upon features and circumstances that exist as of now within the Lorton that exists as of now. This is not, we don't expect anybody to build what we've said necessarily at this point in time, as much as we are saying, what is the vision we're trying to create? And then hopefully the opportunities and people will take on those pieces when they present themselves. But right now, everything is dependent upon what exists now. Well, there's lots of obstacles to what exists now. There are environmental obstacles, as Linwood mentions, there's RPAs and things like that. There are sewer issues, there's transportation issues. There's a whole slew of various problems and issues. What we need to do, however, is be able to create the vision, and that's what it is, a vision for what Lorton would be, and then say, okay, now with those obstacles that we have, how do we help create and overcome some of those obstacles? And then if there's opportunities, with other builders and developers, as they see the opportunities and see the options that we have laid out, then they can come up with ideas and stuff that they can present to us that helps fit those pieces. But instead, what we have is, if we're not creating a vision, but all we're doing is creating and saying, okay, well, we can put in a couple of units over here and there and put a bunch of signage up and a couple of, little niceties or whatever. That's not the vision, I don't think, that we had started with, or the expectations that anybody had for this. And I would tell you, this has been going on for 3-4 years, and it's unbelievably slow, unbelievably without much progress at all. And we just got to look at more of a vision.
And I can appreciate that, Tim. And if you would, I'd like to finish as well. You had said you wanted to be able to talk. So I would just say that visions are great. I work on visions throughout the county. I've been doing it for 20 years. Some have been more successful than others. The most successful have been those that have been right-sized to a more realistic expectation about what the market demand would be. I think one of the most unfortunate visions that we created related to the amount of development that we thought BRAC would support. And the realistic scenario was that there was a lot of on-base contracting. And so the vision that we set up through much of South County did not come to fruition because of that. And so we wanted to make sure, and I think with a lot of this, we want to make sure that we have a realistic vision that we can put in place, that we can go out and talk to the property owners about, and make sure that we can have their buy-in and that they can be part of the future of Lorton. Or if they don't want to be part of the future of Lorton, they sell it off and they work, whoever is buying the property looks at that vision and says, I want to be part of that. I think that's an important thing that, I feel like I can see my business growing into it. And we want to set up that vision. But if we go out and we say that, we are going to have, a lot of growth in this area, and then we put in that transportation infrastructure that says we need roads to be this wide, we need, and we overbuild that infrastructure, that doesn't help anyone. So we need to find that balance between, what we think is, that vision, and provide flexibility for where that, that vision can locate, but also, make sure we're not over planning. And I think what we need, one of the recommendations that we are trying to work through is trying to figure out if we think that realistically, we're not going to get a mosaic size development here. What can we have to make this place special, unique, make it more, retail, commercially viable, getting the restaurants that you want, getting the places and the programming and the areas for socialization and meeting people, getting coffee, having those nice places where if we we have all these various places identified, if we need to prioritize some of them, where is that? And where might be some of the alternatives? And then I think kind of coupled with that is also trying, what we have heard is how do we make, we know that most of the surrounding area within Lorton, the residents right now don't come to the places that we're looking at right now. They're not coming to downtown Lorton. They're going to Woodbridge, they're going to Springfield. They're taking their money and they're going elsewhere because those places have the things that that you all want. And so what we are trying to do within the vision and the statement framework plans is trying to figure out how can we make Lorton both like an interesting place. So you've got all the services and all the cool things that you might get in at the Springfield Town Center or down in Woodbridge, all the services that you need, all the stores that you want, but also make it more interesting and more convenient and accessible to get there. Because if you build, you can build, we could put a Fairfax corner, we could put, some type of mixed use place, but if it doesn't have the programming, it's not going to work. I mean, when you look at the Lorton Station website, it's all about, square footage available. It's all about, here are some pretty pictures, but there's nothing about, programming or events that are happening or any of it. It does not speak to making a destination. It just speaks to, we have this much square footage available. So there are major issues with how people look at Lorton just from, a numbers perspective. And I think what the vision and through these framework plans, what we're trying to do is create more of a unique and interesting place that is built off of what's there and what you all have talked about. Because I do think that there was a lot in those framework plans about what has been discussed. And I would suggest that we try to focus the conversation on those two things, trying to prioritize some of those opportunity sites while also looking at a larger vision for that downtown that is unique and different, that's going to draw people down there so that you don't, if you have a choice between going to Lorton's downtown and going up to Springfield or somewhere else, that you're going to pick going to Lorton because it has the art, it has the programming that I think you all have said you wanted.
I appreciate that, Megan, and I'll make my last comment and then I'll shut up because you've been tolerant of me already so far. But I would say that the one thing is, if you're telling me that because someone did a market study and that market study says nobody really wants to come to Lorton and Lorton's not that big a deal, not all that worthwhile, I would say that that's what Lorton has dealt with since it's for the last 30, 40 years, is that somebody always says, yeah, nobody wants to be here. Lorton's not that great and it shouldn't be able to have that much demand. We beg to differ. We think Lorton has better, and just because somebody doesn't see it, in this case, the market study group that you did.
Hi, I'm here. The market analyst is here. I'm happy to address this.
Okay.
Let me just say, when you're done, I'll happily address this. But go ahead.
But we believe we have more of a demand for Lorton. Lorton's a better place than most people recognize. And with the things that are coming online, we think more people do it. And our goal is to create and set up a vision such that others will be seeing that as well and be able to do something with that vision, and therefore have demand created by what we do here today with this vision.
I totally appreciate that. And I think there's always a place for saying what the market trajectory would be and what the market making potential would be, which is to say that you change the current dynamic by a series of public investments, nonprofit, philanthropic, and other investments.
Yep.
There are many communities throughout the nation that I go to where I make the recommendation and suggestion that they find their niche and they pull out that niche and they're able to get those things. Unfortunately, what you have here is a mismatch in terms of the competitive environment. And I don't want to go through my presentation again that I gave back in January, but I referenced the report. You guys can all go through there. What you have is a bunch of competitive locations, and so you need to pick up your niche and decide where you guys want that to be out of those 3 opportunity sites, and invest your money, time, and effort to getting those things like Megan talked about with the programmatic side that will help to shift that market trajectory. However, we don't look at just the baseline projections of what's happening today and what that means if you continue it. So the fact that you have this demand that I've recommended, intensification,
It looks like we lost Abby, but again, a lot of what you've just talked about, Tim, and what Abby talked about and what Megan talked about is where we're trying to continue the task force conversation, because in looking at what can be done in the public realm, you know, if you don't think it's arts and recreation, we need you to tell us. But what can be done in the public realm to make the public realm and the way that people access these sites, put that in a better position, is going to put us in a better position for the people who own the properties of the opportunity sites that could be redeveloped to say, hey, I see what's going on here and I need to be prepared to compete and be a part of this. So
Again, I just don't want you relying too much on just 3 sites. They're not just 3 sites. The 3 sites are all currently developed sites. There's a whole piece in between that really needs to connect it all together to make this thing work. And you know, and again, but I just keep hearing the 3 opportunity sites. I see the whole area as being an opportunity that we need to be working on. Sorry,
Megan, this is Linwood. I just wanted to let you know that I hear loud and clear what you said, and I think I agree with every word that you said. But with that said, the framework is already here. You know what it is. We've been talking about it for 3 years. We would really like to see some ideas of things that you think will work with what we have, and not just keep talking about the same things over and over and over. We just don't need to talk about framework anymore without seeing some new ideas.
Yeah, and I think what we heard at the last meeting about the opportunity sites, with the focus on the opportunity sites, was that it was disjointed, myopic, and we wanted to scale back so that we aren't just talking about those 3 opportunity sites. And so the frameworks that are in place the frameworks that will be in place in the discussion are trying to zoom out. And the next step, once we get feedback on these, is merging what we had at the last meeting, talking about the area as well in the downtown area. So we are trying to get to that place where we have the nuts and bolts of what are we looking at for the area, and what development will look like, and actually having land uses assigned and numbers assigned, building heights forms, things like that, and how the areas in between as well may provide some opportunities for physical connections, so that we're not just looking at 3 sites on their own. we are looking at physical connections, opportunities for potential infill or redevelopment. So we'll have those conversations.
Based on what you said earlier, and supply and demand is what you were talking about, and how much you can build and stuff like that, I really think a step forward that we could do is choose the 2 out of 3 sites that we're going to try to make work off each other, and come up with a realistic scale and a realistic place to do those things. That's the only thing I can think of that we would narrow any further right now.
And that, I think that was one of the things we also wanted you all to in looking at what's here. And I guess we've had frameworks, but the frameworks haven't really had an idea for themes and that create an identity. So I think that was where the recreation and the arts were coming into this. And when we looked at this when you look at this as a whole and look at the ideas for improved access, that was one of the things we wanted in the breakout discussions. That was one of the things that the questions that we had for you all wanted you to lead to. Which of these sites then, in looking at this framework, which of these sites do you start to prioritize? So if we don't have time to go break out into small groups, we still want to get to a point where we discuss some of these questions, because that's where we really want you to be thinking about where you set those priorities for future development, future intensification of development. Where would you set those priorities? Because when we start seeing how you prioritize where this development would go, where the things that you think Lorton needs more of goes, that's when we start really figuring out what goes in between, so that's part of it. That was a big part of the intention for this exercise that we wanted to do with you all tonight. We want to hear from you on how you prioritize it. We didn't want to come tonight. We wanted you to see the big picture of how everything can fit together, not just these opportunity sites, because you'll see that there's connections to Liberty. There's recommendations for connections to Liberty. There's recommendations to connect not only to the west side of 95, but also to the eastern, to the neighbors to the neighbors to the east of this area that we're looking at as a core. Because when you look at all that development in there, everything ends in cul-de-sacs. And there was no plan between any of those residential developments to get people to the town center, to get people to Gunston Plaza, to get people to Lorton Station, to any of those existing commercial sites. So basically, we want, with what we're looking at we want to hear from you. We wanted you to take a look at the frameworks all together and see if the task force could come to some consensus on what sites you would like to prioritize. So that prioritization is intended to be a big part of the discussion, but we want you all to have an opportunity to kind of give us your ideas on, so we aren't making decisions and just coming to you with decisions made that don't work. And so this framework isn't a final plan. It wasn't intended to be final. It was intended to be the bridge to the next part of the conversation that you all are saying you want to have for things like prioritizing or identifying what happens in between the different commercial sites and along Lorton Road and along these different roads.
I didn't see a single connection that you talked about here that shouldn't be 100% full speed ahead. Let's do it. We are really supposed to be focused on the core area. All those outside connections are easy, obvious decisions, and the answer is yes to all of them. I don't see how it contributes to the discussion of the study area that we're supposed to be talking about.
I jump in real quick here. We have people who are raising their hands, and I don't want to take things out of order. If we could go with Michael Linsky, then Tim Sargent, and Mr. Rumberger.
Hi, thanks, Nick. I hope I'm not out of place. I'm not a task force member, and I'm on staff, but I'm sort of have an on and off relationship. I've worked on this project in the past, and then I've taken time off and done other things and come back to it. But I just had a suggestion, because one thing that sort of helps me as I come back to this and not having been to all the meetings is to look back and at some of the prior materials, and we had the frameworks way back. I agree with that. And I think another thing that gets overlooked is that there were guiding principles and sort of sub objectives that were developed as well that you guys spend a lot of time on. And in my mind, sort of marrying those two and focusing these efforts on some of those principles and things might be helpful as well. And I think in my mind, going sort of a return to the framework aspect, as Megan said, part of that was sort of a dose of market reality, but I think just realizing that not everything is going to be able to be accomplished, not all of those objectives by some big new development coming in and solving all these problems. There's going to have a lot of other things are going to have to happen in the public realm, and things that aren't directly related to development of a commercial site or something that might have to contribute to some of these things. So it's helpful to think at that level. But I think what's missing now maybe is sort of, so my suggestion was maybe to sort of go back and look at those principles and objectives somewhat, and then try to develop actionable sort of items out of those, sort of strategies, I guess, to like, and those can be in concert with the maps and things. It's like, okay, these are the things we want to accomplish. What kind of strategies can we develop to actually accomplish some of this stuff? You can identify low hanging fruit if there's connections, trail connections and things that could help bring in a lot more residents, give them access to some of these places that we want to see successful and things. That's one way. Or maybe some things can be accomplished by some level of new development. If like there's going to be some significant costs involved with some kind of infrastructure and it's going to require some kind of private money, then maybe that's where you look at, there's always a market for housing and stuff. Maybe if the housing can come in and help accomplish these other goals at the same time, then that's sort of leveraging development but it's all for the purpose of accomplishing these more specific objectives and strategies and things. So that was sort of my suggestion, or something to think about.
Commissioner Sargent.
While I agree with Michael, it would be helpful to go back and kind of remind us about the principles and the goals we had originally started, because it sounds like it's evolved to a certain extent between the time we started and where we are now. I think a couple of thoughts, and I appreciate what Megan is saying. I mean, this is a challenging area. It really is, in 3 distinct areas that make it difficult to connect. And I think we would all like to see some kind of connectivity, but I think part of the big picture, and it's worth some additional discussion, which may help either dampen the enthusiasm or enlighten us and the direction, is the issue of connectivity among the sites, as well as Lorton's relationship to I-95 and Route 1 and how that fits in. How you make those things work to your advantage, as opposed to serving as that area of separation between these 3 distinct parts of the Lorton community. And it also includes a candid discussion, which we're kind of getting on. We've had it somewhat, but a candid discussion about additional density. How much do we see and vision as too much? We're kind of there in terms of a starting point. And I was reminded of this earlier when I started out on the Planning Commission a while ago, and we were assigned to tackle Tyson's. And if you think connectivity was challenging here, look at Tyson's. And we envisioned all sorts of things. And I was reminded of where we started with a plan that had been on the books for about 20 to 25 years with 3 metro stops. And where we finished with was a plan that included 4 metro stops and the will to move forward, because you had everybody on the same page. Now, unfortunately, metro could not be underground, which adds to some of that continuing distinct separation. But I think it's going to take some candid discussions about what transportation does and does not do to help this place gel as a distinct, coherent site to make that work, and would probably benefit from that kind of discussion as well as the marketing analysis to help people understand where we can go with this in terms of density, in terms of connectivity, and how you overcome the challenges that make this site 3 distinct sites as opposed to the one Lorton that we all kind of envision right now. That's my 2 cents.
Mr. Rumberger.
Thank you. I'm trying to find the word to sum up after pre-reading, and I do appreciate receiving this last night and being able to look at it. Thank you, Stephen. The word I'm working right now is made. I'm dismayed when I hear Megan say this is not going to be anything like a mosaic, because I do think a mosaic is strict. It's the most recent planned grouping like that. I don't believe Fairfax Circle is what we're really talking about. Taking a giant and making a 4-story building. And I mean, that to me was not what I was envisioning unifying into a town center concept, which for 3 years, I thought that's what we were doing. And before that, for 3 more years before that, with other task forces trying to look at. I'm dismayed because Catherine Creighton Martin had an idea 2.5 years ago about why don't we start with a motto or a logo or a market theme that we could bring people in for and people could understand and unify within the community. And we didn't go any further with density to do this. Absolutely. It is. We do need to know what the density will be to do the things. You don't go to Woodbridge. I don't go to Woodbridge for the arts. Okay, I go to Woodbridge to shop and eat. I don't go to Woodbridge to find the arts or open space. What we have here, and I then look at how I don't know how Prince William seems to have the acumen to plan as they do with massive numbers, and we aren't able to do that. We aren't able to string together a series of talks about the marketability of this corner, our little slice of paradise. Finally, since I try to read more than I probably should, I was at a VDOT meeting when I was asking on the repaving, restriping, and I was asking the there about, at the end of it, I was being respectful and not trying to monopolize. And they had questions at the end, and so I put my hand up and I asked about getting Lorton Road repaved or upgraded, because it is very rough. It is very cracked. It's very rough. And part of that is because of the continual pounding of traffic off of Route 1 and onto and getting up to 95 and vice versa. And I was told, no, we're not looking at anything. We won't even evaluate Lorton Road there from Armistead all the way up to the I-95 interchange. Won't even look at it to study until next year, because we're looking at it as a main street. I put that together, and then I read the report that they're to build a new sewer pumping station in Tyson's for the now estimated 4 million more gallons that it's going to be created within 10 years, and have to come down to the Nomencol water treatment plant. I look at the infrastructure that is not there in order to handle that, and thinking of just the basic concept of those Lortonians around here that look at the odors there. And I think Mike does an incredible job. He does an incredible job of mitigating that as often as he can. But the support that the county would have to put in place to mitigate that completely, for the Gunston Plaza Shopping Center to become a 4 or 5-story shopping area and housing, in order to do things, I don't hear that conversation. I don't hear that commitment. So when I start looking at these things and the bits and pieces, I hear backup being clicked on. It can't be what we maybe thought it was. Maybe it needs to be lesser. And that is exactly what Tim Reiser said. That's the history of this place. We back out of it instead of move forward. I see nothing bold. I see absolutely no bold vision, no The boldest vision right now is in private development when you look at Alpine X. That's the most bold vision we have. And I'm trying to capture how they come up with it, how they come up with a design concept, which had never been talked about before, and how we translate that into creating a town center and an identity for Lorton. And I haven't seen it yet. And I do not want another market study. I don't want another market study that talks about 900 jobs in Newington Forest when there's not places for 900. There are not employers for 900 in Newington Forest. And when I questioned that, I was told, yeah, but there are spaces that are going to be made. Where? Define it. The pieces that are it's just very frustrating to be on the task force right now. To be very truthful with you. Thank you.
Well, I have a question then, because you just talked about the 900 jobs in not understanding where the 900 jobs would be in Newington Forest. Where would you prioritize density happening? Because if you look at the current land development that's happened here, it's the way the land is developed here. It's anti I guess the thought of having increased density. So if you were to prioritize somewhere within this study area, within the focus area, where would you envision in density, that the density being intensified and increased? Where would you see the people living and going?
I would see the density being developed around the center core idea of the town concept.
But you have to.
I'm on Stephen Land Use Committee. Have been for over 5 years. I've listened to very bright people. Nick and Linwood have both done planning, master planning document for a decade back. I'm trying to find a time when we've told somebody, no, you can't build that. I do know that we can and have had great support out of our supervisor's office on building that. Is it green? Is that the greenest you can make that? And asking that as a condition or a statement up front about what our expectations are. But density has to come in the place where the development will be that will create the town center concept. I had occasion last Thursday to eat at Hometown in Lorton Station. The traffic never stopped. And the number of out-of-state license plates traveling down Lorton Boulevard. If you truly believe that you're going to create a pedestrian-friendly area when those people came swinging up to that stop sign, and then as on the other direction, burning out and going straight on up toward Pohick Road, that there is a whole review, a whole new process talked about. And I don't think it's just lane widening. It's what are the people going to come for? What are they going to come for?
So that's interesting too, because when we talk about one of the things we've been talking about is the plan for the public realm and how that, that's where we would control, and one of the ideas we've been kind of kicking around is the idea of possibly creating density at Lorton Town Center, at the VRE lot. So but then again, like you were saying, there are also going to have to be some transportation changes that happen at Lorton Station. So if that's the kind of guidance and input we're looking for. I guess if there's some way of getting to a point where we're having this conversation with the task force, and if there's some consensus built, if that's where you would like us to start looking for creating density, that starts pointing us in the next direction to start looking at what could happen there. So and if you think about it too, Lorton Station was originally intended to be that town center. So, but I guess the flip side of that coin is, at times when we talk to the task force, one of the concerns about looking at Lorton Station as the top priority was that it's so far off of Lorton Road. So that that's where I guess these are the kinds of things we want to hear from you all from, and we want to have, these are the conversations we want to see you all have, because those are, as you look at each of these sites, it may come with its own obstacles to being that one place that you start focusing on for place and density. So.
Yeah, and I would add, I'm sorry to put dismay in your heart, Dale, and because by my statement about Mosaic, it wasn't that something like that couldn't come, something similar in terms of use mix and interest couldn't come to Lorton. It was about the size and the scale, because all of Mosaic, when you look at the geographies and you look at the scale, and it's much bigger, right? It's much bigger than any of these opportunity sites. And they have, in the plan for the Merrifield area, the foundation of it is you have 2 cores. You have a dual core system where you have a transit station area. So speaking of infrastructure, you're founded on, transit-oriented development. And then you have a second core where the Mosaic Town Center is. So you have two much larger opportunity sites than what we have in Lorton in terms of the commercial areas. And I think what I think we need to look at is just trying to figure out the smaller version of that. And I think that's the goal that we're all looking for, right? Is how can we right size some of these places to make it as interesting and unique as the Mosaic, but at a smaller scale, knowing that we don't have the large opportunities that the Merrifield area afforded it. So I think that is something that we have been wrestling with for years. And I guess I would suggest, as Steve said, and I think Marlon actually mentioned this in the chat, I think it's important for us to talk about, if we're, picking up on some of those, the discussions in the past about which ones, we've had spent much time about talking about what types of development we want to see in each of these opportunity sites. And I think it's important now, if we can, talk about, well, if we are going to prioritize some of them, what are those, what are the priority pieces that we would focus on? And what are some of the obstacles that we think would prevent this from prevent one of these opportunity sites from becoming the priority? So I think I would say that if we can, I know we have talked somewhat about that in past meetings, but if we could, we have a larger group now, if we can talk through that, I think that would be helpful for us as we look at, planning out these, going back to the concepts and planning out, what might happen at each of these opportunity sites.
Mr. Reinhardt.
Thanks, Nick. So I just wanted to clarify something. I think what Megan said is as having that as the next step makes sense, but I just want to clarify with task force members, what I think I'm hearing is that, of the 3 opportunity sites, Gunston Plaza, Lorton Town Center, and Lorton Marketplace, you all are mainly asking at this stage to see essentially renderings of what a mixed use town center concept looks like. Is that kind of the impression that I'm getting?
I think one of the things that was stated a long time ago, and I think Linwood was one who stated it, was we all know that we need more density, and we all know where it needs to go. It is somewhere near, along Lorton Road between I-95 and Route 1. And somebody tell me if I'm wrong.
My opinion of where it needs to go is spread between Gunston Plaza and Lorton Station, connect those two, and put a back entrance into Lorton Station that parallels the railroad tracks. I hesitate to say these things because I've said them many times before, but you've got some opportunities between those two areas, Lorton Station and Gunston Plaza, for some consolidation, make kind of a town center strip going through right there, and get the traffic out of there and put it in a connection between the Lorton Station VRE parking lot and Lorton Road, right at the underpass, right where the Panera Bread's going.
We started always and have said that there are three sites. The three sites need to be connected somehow together to best we can to make them all not be three separate distinct sites, but the three sites that look like they are part and parcel to one piece altogether. So we have the Amtrak with 400,000, Lorton Auto Strain with 400,000 out of town guests that are coming in. We want to be able to have them walkable to the rest of the places. But again, that's the key piece. It's not just the three sites, but it's connecting, making those better and making the connection between the three sites.
I think the Lorton Station definitely has to be one of the key ones. And I'm just waiting for the public meeting where they're talking when they talk about that Metro is going to come down 95 and go into Prince William County, and there's only one place to do that. I can't imagine that that's not going to happen someday, and Lorton Station needs to be prepared for it.
Okay. Are we ready to carry on now?
Well, let's see. We have about 40 minutes. So I guess I'll throw it back to you and the task force members to decide how you'd like to handle those 40 minutes. Do you want an overview of the vision from the consultants, or do you want to try to go through some of the questions that we have for you all about the frameworks, or do you want to continue the discussion about how to prioritize, I guess, thoughts and ideas for development at any of the different opportunity sites in the time we have remaining together?
Steve, as the consultant, I don't need to present the framework plans. I think the most valuable piece would be if people have any disagreements with what's been shown. It sounds like most people agree with the framework plans. That's just a temperature reading. There may be others who haven't spoken that have particular points, but maybe those could be sent via email to the county. So we could save some time there. I agree with many of the comments that have been made on all sides. And so just to move the ball forward, I would say our time would be best spent to dive into the questions that we were going to do in the breakout sessions, but go through those 9 or 10 questions together as a group, see if there is consensus on those so we can really move the ball forward. We are anxious to get back to the concept plans and actually drawing what the vision could be. So if we can get to the point where we understand there's good support for what's been laid out in the vision plans. If it feels like it's been trod upon before, maybe it's the anchors. We do think it's important to have some whether you call it themes or what we call it identity that you build forward on. Lorton's gone through a lot of changes. The one thing I'll say on that is if we can get behind arts and recreation, to us that stood out, and to the county that stood out. It's 2 pillars that could really unite, and a lot of the marketing for this area could build upon. It's just a way of tying those areas together. So we need to tie the areas together physically, by an identity that everybody can latch onto. You have great momentum with things like Alpine X coming, with the workhouse arts. with the redevelopment of Liberty. So there's that heritage art culture that you can all build off of. But there has to be a game plan to, the frameworks are just that. It's just a game plan that everybody agrees to and can move forward with. Once we can get beyond that, I think we would love to paint the picture, show what could be, so it excites developers. The county can control what they can control, which is, setting a vision plan, updating the comp plan, and working on some of the public space elements, whether that's signage or streets or trails. Those are things they can control. Development is going to come in when when there's a demand for it, when there's a developer who has a vision. One thing that we can do to boost that forward is to put that together as a vision plan that lets people latch on to it. We're anxious to get that started. So I would say let's fast forward, if it's okay with the county, to the questions we were going to tackle in the breakout rooms together, get through that, use the 40 minutes we have to make sure that there's a kind of unified path forward, and let us get to drawing those. Just my pitch.
This is Linwood, as someone that is clearly, and I apologize, been one of the people dominating this conversation. Collectively, we are always smarter. I do think there could be some benefit in going into the breakout sessions, so everyone's opinion is heard and everybody has an opportunity to talk. So if you guys were already set up to do that, I would love to get down on paper what everybody's ideas are, and not just a couple of us.
Okay. Are we capable of doing that now, Stephen?
Yes.
Leslie, would you like to do a quick report out, or should we just save that for the next meeting when we talk through the concepts?
Sorry, I think we've had everyone on longer, so I would say, it'd probably be best to summarize that after and not try to go back through, and we'll compare notes on our end. Matt and Maite and I will get together tomorrow and talk it through, but and I know we'll accumulate notes from the note takers. So I think we can handle that and get that out to the task force and spare everyone additional time.
I agree with that. Thank you very much. Thank you everyone for your participation. Looks like Steve, are you back? Do you want to provide some closing words? And
yeah, I just wanted to thank everyone for your time and participating in the discussion. And it sounded like what Cecily was speaking to was similar to what Matt was covering as far as what the next steps are. So in the process. So if the task force is interested, I can send out the full set of questions. And if you have any other ideas or thoughts about what you've seen tonight in the way of the frameworks, you feel free to send me a response by email of anything that you think may be missing, or anything that that should be added or taken away. And again, what we were really trying, the purpose for tonight was to just see if this idea of placing these frameworks together with these themes that are prevalent in the community was a good start to move next into having discussions with any landowners who may be interested in participating and providing any input to how they see themselves positioned in this process and in this future plan, and also to get started on providing some concepts that would be built off of the framework. So I wasn't privy to the full conversations on each side, but if there's a feeling that we are at a good point where there's something to build from, that's what we really need to know. So
I think we're ready.
The staff there is like hundreds of people.
I think we're ready.
Yeah, keep the foot on the gas.
Yep.
If you can email those questions around though, Stephen, I think everybody chimed in kind of once and might have caught some other ideas after listening to some other people. So they might have some further comments that they'd like to submit.
Okay. and don't feel obligated to limit your responses to what's in the questions either. You know, like there's been a big talk about how to prioritize, and we've heard pieces and different ideas from different task force members, but being in separate groups, we haven't seen where the consensus is, or where you know where the most votes are for what you would like to see as the first spot, and then or even if none of these three spots are where you see the future for planning, you know, Liberty's already coming on board, and sort of what Megan alluded to earlier when there was discussion about Mosaic. You know, there could be a situation or a scenario where you all would like to see two centers in this area, and one built around what's going on at Liberty, or maybe even three. You know, there could, you know, maybe you want to see, you know, three different centers of activity around the workhouse, Liberty, and you know this core area that we've been discussing. But you know, I'll send out the questions, but don't limit your responses or your ideas to what's in those questions. You know.
Also, I just want to make a quick plug because this got pulled together very quickly. We are having a ribbon cutting at Popeyes on Wednesday at 1 o'clock. So it'll be a quick event, but they confirmed on Friday that they'd like to do it Wednesday. So Wednesday at 1 o'clock, if anybody wants to come on over.
Okay.
And don't put
Are they
yourself in a
giving out
position.
free chicken and biscuits?
You got me, Megan. I was just about that.
I was just gonna say, don't go there on a bad day. I mean, you know, hopefully it's a better day, so you don't get called into the kitchen and have to cook the chicken for them.
Red beans and rice, red beans and rice.
Yeah.
Thank
All
you.
right. Well, thank everyone, and thank you, Sophia, for your time. I learned a lot from working with you, and I'm still gonna bug you from time to time. So
I'll still be around.
all right.
Thanks, Sophia.
Thanks, Sophia.
Thanks, everyone.
Congratulations.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody. Congratulations, Sophia.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
All right.
You too. Good night.
Good night.